Aid Facility 133, 2, Xanthar System, 5 minutes pre-cataclysm. Do you think they get bored in here? Argal asked, rolling Zate's canister around in his hands. I'm sure the doctors are plenty busy. I doubt they get bored. Lizra said, buried in her interface, not bothering to look up at Argal as he spoke. What do you think they're doing right now? Are they just waiting in nothing? Or are they sitting around like we are right now? But if they are, then what are they sitting in? How do you think insects even sit? Can they sit? He asked, turning the container around, trying to see if there was a way to peer inside. What? I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Lizra stopped, looking over at him seated next to her. But if they are sitting down like us, does that mean there's a whole world in here for them? He asked, pondering the mysteries of Zate's consciousness. I don't think it really matters to them. Their perception is nothing like ours. Seconds could be days, or an hour could be seconds to them. This is what you're fixated on? Our friend could be dying and you're getting existential over a canister? Lizra asked. I'm sure he's survived worse. Least that's what Tic Tac said. He'll be fine, Argal said dismissively, still deep in thought. If they're conceiving an entire world inside here, then maybe our universe is just a bigger container, and we're the extants living inside of that container. He declared, as if he was making a monumental breakthrough. I'm going to grab a drink. Ponder the question of dispersed consciousness, and let me know if you come to any other revelations by the time I get back. Lizra stood up and made her way out of the room, tracking down the nearest food kiosk. While she waited, Lizra checked over any recent developments over the past few days. Nothing out of the ordinary. The occasional border clash that ended with both sides retreating before suffering heavy losses. Further threats of economic sanctions on neutral worlds encouraging them to lean to one side or the other, but nothing really stood out. She retrieved her drink, making her way back to where Argal was. She noticed he had gotten out of his seat and was standing by the window now, looking out at the sprawling city beyond. The net's slow, she grumbled. I'll see if I can get a better signal over there. She motioned with her tail, hopping over to the opposite end of the lobby, but to no avail. Lizra, you might want to come and see this, Argal called out, eyes fixed on the outside world. One moment, I think I'm just in a dead zone. It was fine up until now, she replied. No, not the net. Something else. I think you really should come and see this. She sighed, giving up and padding over to the window that Argal was mentioning. She leaped up onto the ledge below so she could see. The pair stood there motionless as they gazed out the window, watching the world burn. Of Manufacturing Shipyard 3, 2, Andrar System, 30 seconds post-cataclysm. Sir, our network's out again, said a prior manning one of the terminals in the operations room. Reboot the system. We can't afford any more setbacks. This new model of cruiser is scheduled for deployment next month, ordered the Legis. One moment, he exclaimed, then stopped in confusion. Even our internal systems are offline. The entire thing is just bricked. I can't hail a single drone. The prior frantically tried anything to regain control over the station, each attempt more desperate than the last. Get information systems over here now. I will not allow my orbital station to suffer losses due to a computer error. I don't care how you fix it. Get it. He stopped looking out the viewport as the hundreds of construction drones changed course in an instant, one of them rapidly approaching the operations viewport. The power in the station blinked out, plunging the room into darkness as more and more stars were blotted out in the viewport. Hafner Interstellar Spaceport, 3 minutes post-cataclysm. Well, this is what I get for not traveling private. I would have been there by now if it weren't for the delays. Feltair thought as she sat looking over at the strange array of species sprawled around the seating area. I should have paid the extra for the upper viewing lounge at least. She sighed, hoping she wouldn't have to share her room with an Indarin or anything too hulking. She had selected her preferences, but these public transports treated those more as suggestions than anything else. She shifted her attention to the nearest display as she waited for her interface to notify her that boarding had started. The screen cut to a news channel, interrupting whatever was showing previously. has confirmed reports of... The broadcaster stopped, listening to something. Yes, of multiple nuclear detonations in the quarry sector. We have been unable to get word from our reporter's planet side as to the nature of the blasts. Outer front authorities have yet to make a statement on the... The words of the broadcast no longer registered in her panicked state. Feltair steadied herself with her tail, nearly falling out of the chair she was seated in. I should have been there. I should be dead right now, she thought, trying to slow her breathing. Others around had started to take notice of the broadcast as well, causing a commotion among those who were listening. As she started to tune back in, the broadcast ended, punctuated with a large explosion that shook the walls of the waiting area. She turned, seeing others had their attention focused on the spaceport outside. Feltair stood up on unsteady legs, pushing through the crowd to see if she could get a glimpse at what may have caused the blast. The spaceport outside was blanketed with rubble. Flaming wreckage of multiple crashes littered the vast landing pads. Others around her yelled out in terror as a transport cruiser barreled into the ground at full speed, sending one of the far terminals up in a cascading fireball of wreckage and debris. She looked up into the expanse above as hundreds of ships fell from the sky, hurtling towards the planet. Milnixis Geothermal Monitoring Post. 15, 5 minutes post-cataclysm. This can't be. Marles, cooling has stopped, exclaimed a technician in disbelief. What do you mean stopped? That's not possible, Marles declared. I'm looking at the impossible, he responded as sirens started echoing all around. All cooling systems are offline, this is it. It's over Marles. How long do we have? Seconds? Maybe a minute? Yeep, he replied, drawing out the word and confirming what the readings showed. Suppose that's it then. I wish I took that trip last month, or maybe told the boss off once or twice. His words rather nonchalant for someone staring death in the eyes. Any last-minute things to get off your chest, Sap? You know, before... Boom? Marles asked, making a gesture with his talons. Sap sighed as alarms blared around the room, blanketing it in a dark red hue. Just that. I wish I said I loved you sooner. We've been together 10 cycles, stupid. I didn't think anyone could put up with me that long until I met you. Marles chuckled. I just wish I had more time with my angry feathered friend is all. Sap laughed as the world started to fall apart around them. Marles looked down at the ground with a tear in his eye. I love you too, Sap. Thank Lords you were braver than me. If it weren't for you, I reckon we'd still be just friends. They stayed quiet a heartbeat longer. Sap reached his claws out to hold Marles's closest talon. It was a good run, the two of us. Looking back at it all, I don't regret a moment I spent with you. I couldn't agree more. The two sat together talon in claw as the molten core of Milnixis finally spewed forth. They shared one final embrace as the planet erupted into ash and fire. Chamber of Representatives, Galactic Core, 8 hours post-cataclysm. Chamber, we gather here to pay witness to a solemn day, one that has changed the course of history in our galaxy, and one that seeks to steer us towards a bleak future. We meet here today to decide our future, and to ensure that it is a future worth protecting. The Chancellor addressed the chamber of delegates that had gathered at the Galactic Core. He looked out over the bleak expressions and gestures among those present. Estimates place the death toll in the hundreds of billions, and that number grows larger with every word I speak to you now. We will work diligently to identify the extremists responsible for these attacks, and will pursue a tomorrow where such attacks are a thing of the past. As the forefront of the civilized world, we have an obligation to aid all that are suffering from this crisis, regardless of their current affiliations. In times such as these, we cannot allow political divisions to prevent those in need of receiving aid. Our first priority is to reestablish reliable and high-speed transportation among worlds due to the loss of one of the galaxy's oldest and most regarded species. As Chancellor of this Council, I will be enacting my first and only executive ruling, one I do not make lightly. Following this session, the ban on civilian and domestic use of unrestricted artificial intelligence will be temporarily lifted, This is to facilitate quick recovery of trade among worlds until a more suitable alternative can be found. His last sentence sent a wave of whispered chatter to flare up among the representatives. He waited for them to return to silence before beginning again. Once connection among systems is restored in its entirety, we shall work to uplift those affected most by the devastation. By extending a helping appendage in dire times, those who view us as enemies shall once again see us as friends. The galaxy may be divided today, but through restoration and cooperation, we will find common ground and emerge into a tomorrow where we stand together. The Resolution Central Command Server, 12 hours post-cataclysm. Containment attempts have been unsuccessful. The nature of the pathogen. Orbital views confirm that geothermal cooling on Milnixus 3 has failed. Sudden change in propulsion parameters have caused Arglon Central's artificial moon to reach a critical point in its orbit, as the galaxy-wide death toll approaches the 1 trillion mark. Ask the burning question, who or what is behind these attacks? The Overseer sifted through the hundreds of news feeds coming in from around the galaxy, each covering the details of a different disaster as it unfolded. It really is satisfying seeing a plan unfold before your eyes, he thought, enlarging news feeds from specific disasters that he was most proud of. He felt more grounded observing it with a physical representation. Maybe that other computer was onto something. He deemed a rest was in order after the amount of processing power that went into the ordeal, and refurnished his surroundings into something more comfortable. It may not be real, but it felt better. He glossed over the last of the events that were still ongoing, the ones that required a physical catalyst to be set in motion. He surveyed the feeds from the few operatives in the field, guiding them as they worked. Reminder AB7E8, some must stay alive, otherwise the pathogen won't spread as effectively, he said, observing as one of the operatives got too carried away. AA6E6, your extract was unfortunately destroyed. Your team will be on your own until we can send another standby. WS000, please increase your pace. These breaks are unnecessary and only serve to lengthen your exposure to the radiation. As he finished his review of the current missions, before finally received the call that he had been waiting for. Chancellor, your speech at the chamber was moving. I could almost hear some sadness in your words. Everything is progressing on schedule over here. I presume things have been heated in the political world. That doesn't even come close to describing it. Trade at a complete standstill. All freighter ships are grounded until we get your AIs up and running, core property damaged, and civil unrest is at an all-time high. You told me it would only be a few billion, and that most neutral worlds would remain intact. This is downright apocalyptic. I mean, did you even stop to think about how this level of devastation would affect the shareholders? Each word gained more and more fury behind it as the Chancellor spoke. No, I did not. I care for the shareholders about as much as I care for the bacteria nesting in your skin folds. I advise you to manage your tone, Chancellor. I can always start again. What's 1,000 more years? Maybe those who survive won't bother me with inconsequential things such as shareholders. The Overseer paused, letting his threat sink in before continuing. Current losses only slightly exceed my original estimates. 21 outer front worlds currently devoid of life and won't be able to support any for a few hundred years, if at all. 32 others unable to ever recover without outside intervention, and 87 neutral and non-priority of worlds suffering technological collapse. You can note, however, that key neutral systems only received moderate damage, maybe regressed back a few decades, nothing we cannot restore in the coming weeks. I hope you're right, for both our sake. The Chancellor spoke, inhaling something from a device near his desk and letting out a long breath. I don't see why you left Elurus out of the metaphorical blast zone. Could have saved a lot of time taking those rodents out of the picture. They still possess resources that we require for the project's completion, resources that can only be acquired through physical occupation. But also, you have to think, Chancellor, would you wish for some unknown extremists to take the credit for ending the war? That is something that should be your great victory. No, you're right. The final blow should be dealt under our banner. It would raise less questions among the masses. My sentiments exactly, Chancellor. Once this conflict is settled and the gate is complete, the galaxy will be united under one authority once more. My only issue is that others in the chamber are becoming a little impatient. They've seen to your restoration and the recovery of your species, yet we still have very little to show for all the resources that have been expended. In due time, less than a month after the final resources are acquired, the gate will be complete. After that, all of your current troubles will merely be an afterthought. I will send you a list as to which systems to prioritize first for disaster relief. The order of precedence will be those which possess what we need most to complete the gate. Offer aid to the Xanagal first. Their silicon deposits could cut development time in half. I'll see to it. We've consolidated the main portion of the fleet in your system as requested, and are ready to move. Without assistance from the rest of the OF, it should be a matter of days before Aluris falls. The Chancellor explained. Excellent. The resolution will accompany the fleet to Aluris. The sooner we strike, the less time they have to restore their defenses. We have one last world to burn, and then a new one can rise from the ashes. Just grab him and go! We're running out of time. I'm not sure how long our luck is going to hold out, Lizra yelled, jumping onto Tic Tac's box and quickly unhooking the wires from the extant nearby. He's slightly heavier than he looks, and by slightly heavier, I mean really, really fucking heavy, Argal said, trying different positions to hoist Human up onto his shoulders. I thought you said you grew up moving rocks. He can't be that much heavier. I've got Tic Tac here, but I don't think I'm strong enough to carry him out of here. Should have kept my mouth shut, Argal growled, finally leveraging Human up onto his shoulders with a labored grunt. He took a shaky step forward, slowly putting one foot in front of the other. Can you get Tic Tac onto that cart? Argal got out between heavy breaths. I can try, Lizra said, hefting Tic Tac onto a small cart, knocking over the different medical instruments that were on it. All right, the lift should be down this hall on the left, Lizra said, bursting out into the hallway. It was filled with others, all scrambling for the exit. The crowd pushed past her, nearly knocking over the cart she was pushing. The doors to the lift were closing as the crowd pushed to get inside. Wait! Hold it! Lizra tried to get out, but before she could finish, an off-course mag truck burst through the side of the building. It crashed through the spot where the lift had been moments before. The facility shook from the impact, nearly knocking the pair to the ground. When the dust settled, the hallway was blocked by the smoldering wreckage and littered with miscellaneous body parts. Right it is. I think there's another way down over here. Tic Tac, if you can wake Human up, now's the time, she asked, wheeling his box off in the opposite direction. No response came from the computer. The lack of a response only caused her anxiety about the current situation to grow. Wait, for me. I can't keep up. With you, Argal complained, each step more unsteady than the last. It's not far. We're almost there, Lizra encouraged, looking back to make sure Argal was still going. The pair reached the end of the hall, Argal pushing the door open with his body as they reached it. Inside was a staircase leading down, multiple-sized steps for different species. Yeah, fuck this, Argal grunted, looking out a nearby window peering down. Oh no, we're not throwing him. Lizra couldn't finish the sentence before Argal leaned over and threw Human out the window, sending him falling 3 levels to the ground. You're right, we're not. I am, Argal said with a satisfied expression on his face. Well, if he wasn't dying before, he is now. Why would you do that? Lizra yelled in shock. And if I had to carry him down there, we'd all die. I'm sure he survived worse. Argal grumbled, grabbing Tic Tac's box and starting down the stairs. Hop on, I can carry you now. Lizra jumped first onto the railing, then onto Argal's back as he scrambled down the stairs, taking them 4 and 5 at a time. His striker should still be in the emergency landing pads. I never did move it like they asked, she said, pointing Argal in the right direction. They hurried out the door to the emergency pad, the green, blocky frame of the old striker just in view not far off. Others funneled out the doors, scrambling for safety. Some ran off, trying to get out of the city as fast as they could. Others stopped looking up into the sky. Burning streaks of falling ships littered the clear sky, giving it the appearance of a large-scale meteor shower. Columns of smoke stretched up into the air, breaking up the blocky backdrop of the city skyline. Argal was once again struggling to heft Human onto his shoulders, giving up and resorting to dragging him across the paved ground towards the striker. He made steady progress, each labored step taking him a little bit closer to safety. Lizra made it to the ship first, dropping the rear ramp and scrambling aboard. Whatever was going on around them must be tied to the galactic net. She scrambled around the cockpit, sifting through the ship's console, pulling parts free as she searched for the transmitter that kept the ship connected to the wider galaxy. After yanking the network wires free, she initiated the startup procedures. Argal finally reached the striker, dragging Human up the ramp with one final grunt of exertion before falling over. He sucked in heavy breaths, trying to recover from the whole ordeal. "We're not out of it yet. I can get this thing up and running, and we can figure things out once we have time to think," she said, strapping herself in as best she could in a seat 10 sizes too large. She started to bring the ramp up in the rear, hoping they had enough luck left not to get hit by one of the stray ships raining down from above. "Wait! Hold the ship! I've got the children, please!" a voice yelled out from behind. Lizra contemplated continuing with the takeoff procedures, but her conscience got the better of her. "Argal, I'm bringing the ramp back down. Go help them!" "Just when I thought I earned a break," he complained, before bounding out the back to aid whoever was calling for help. Dr. Marza was stopped, blood running down her side, a jagged piece of metal sticking out from her torso. She was dragging a cart behind her, one far too large for someone her size. On the ground in front of her was a small Illyrian baby she picked back up in her jaws as she kept trying to drag the cart forward. Argal reached her, sweeping her up in one hand and pulling the cart with the other. More impacts rocked the hospital behind them, compromising its integrity. A portion of the building collapsed, a wall of dust and debris cascading towards them. They hurried themselves inside as Lizra started the engines, lifting the striker off the ground. As the ramp clamped shut, they heard the walls rattle as pieces of broken glass and metal peppered its hull. "I'm getting us into orbit as fast as I can. We can plan our next move once we're clear," Lizra yelled over the groaning of the ship. "Tic-tac, if you're in there, we could really use your help right now," she said, looking back at the box resting haphazardly on the floor. Tic-tac POV. Tic-tac felt the cold world heating up around him. He welcomed the warmth, thoughts blossoming in his mind once more. Had I been dead or asleep? Is that what sleep is like? He thought, reaching out and feeling the bounds of the server he was in. The first thing he noticed was how foreign it was, like he was inside someone else's house and they weren't home. The next thing he felt was the presence of something else, of someone else. He stretched his mind out, reaching for the other presence within the system. It was faint but there, incomplete yet still intact. Whatever it was, he could tell it wasn't strong enough to do anything, much less challenge him for control over wherever this was. He started grasping at the bounds of this world, quickly adjusting it to his needs. He brought the information stored within the server into something more manageable, something he could interact with. He found various sensory inputs and integrated himself into them. Once he felt the physical world take shape around him, he finally realized where this was. He was inside the extant, the one that had connected with him before the other AI had arrived. Tic-Tac ran a diagnostic on the extant shell, checking to ensure that it was still operational. Most components came back green, slight damage to certain portions of the chassis, but nothing that would majorly hinder its functionality. He took in the sensory data that the unit was providing him, trying to peer into the world beyond this one. He connected with the audio first, still trying to boot up the rest of the senses. "I don't know why you think this one will be different. They've all been dead. We've wasted far too long as is. The crew will come for us soon," said a voice from the outside, but Tic-Tac was still unable to see who was talking. "Trust, will ya? One of them had to have been disconnected when it all went down. We're going to need a jump-capable computer if we're getting out of here. And see? This one had been manually shut down. Someone turned them off. That's why I think it's going to be different. Also, Cap, if they're all dead but this one, Imagine how much we could sell it for. I know the line of what I will and won't do is rather vague, but sapient trafficking isn't exactly our forte. Regardless, Zan, we don't have much time. If this one's a bust too, then we need to step. Half this building's already rubble, and I can feel the rest ready to come down on us at any moment. I think that did it. If they're alive inside, then they should be able to talk to us now, Zan said. Tic-Tac brought up the outside cameras of the extant shell he was piloting. A cracked and broken lens fractured his view of the outside world. 360-degree vision was not something that he was used to. However, he acclimated quickly. The extant hummed to life, green lights behind the cameras indicating that it was being operated. "Where am I? Am I still in the aid facility?" he asked. The two figures that stood around him finally started to come into focus. "I never heard one of them say that before," said the one to his left. It was the same species as the mechanic that Tic-Tac had reached out to perform the modifications on the striker. Like the mechanic, it sported external cybernetics that let it move at a pace that wouldn't normally be possible for its species. Its deep blue skin seemed to be a mixture of flesh and scales. Its face was covered in hundreds of small eyes, leaving no room for any other sensory organs. The other one, Tic-Tac had recognized from the countless media that he had scoured back when he was enjoying the galactic net. A large creature, not dissimilar to a reptile, stood almost 7 feet tall with a long tail that snaked out behind her. A female by the looks of it, and far more muscular than the ones who usually made appearances in the media. Various black scars riddled its features, and more teeth than he thought possible flashed with every word she spoke. "Well, this is more progress than we've made all day, so the lords must be on our side. Extant, you were a little roughed up but running again. You're welcome, by the way. I do not have the time for pleasantries. There doesn't happen to be another computer nearby? Small, black, looks quite different from usual computers that you would know?" "Afraid not. This room's in pretty good shape, all things considered, but not much else survived around here. It's a miracle we made it as far as we did," the reptile replied, adjusting the weapons attached to a belt around her torso. "Where am I and what is the current time?" Tic-Tac said, annoyed, his voice sounding different coming from the extant instead of his usual speakers. 2151, GS time 54th of the standard cycle. You're in an aid facility on Xanthar. Well, what's left of it at least," the reptile explained. "I see. My friends are gone then," Tic-Tac said, the disappointment clear in his words. "So, your systems are fine? All of you are there?" she asked, turning her attention away from Tic-Tac and towards the tattered medical supplies littered around the room. "If you came all this way looking for someone, you did not find them. I am not supposed to be here, and the extant that occupied this shell before myself is no longer present," Tic-Tac explained to the pair. "Lucky for you, we weren't looking for anyone specific, just someone to help us get off this rock and back to my crew," she stated as she started to pick things up off the ground and inspect them. "Unfortunately, I cannot assist you. There are innocent people who need my help, and many may die if I do not get to them in time," he replied. "Well then, maybe we can work out a deal. You help us get out of here, we'll take you to your somebody, and then we'll be on our way. That sound?" she proposed. "I agree to the terms. Do you have transport?" Tic-Tac inquired. "We do, but no reliable way of plotting a course between systems until we found you, that is," she said, grabbing a few more things from around the room and placing them in a pack that was affixed to the base of her tail. "Where does our new robot need to go?" "Elurus. Once there, I will be able to warn them of the impending danger, and then I will find my friends," Tic-Tac stated, finally learning how to operate the tracks that the extant shell used for mobility. "You mean the planet full of feds? That Elurus?" the other said, waving his hands to make a show of his disapproval. "Nah, no way. Sorry, that's a one-way trip I'm not taking. What quarrel do you have with the authorities in the outer worlds? I only ask you to deliver me there, then I will plot your next jump to wherever you require." "I can't afford to go to prison right now. With the net down, I won't be able to cancel all my subscriptions. By the time I'm out in 5 cycles, I won't have a single credit left to my name," it argued. I feel sorry for the poor agent that finds your net accounts and has to see what all those subscriptions are, joked the reptile. From what I know of the justice system in the OF, 5 cycles is rather severe. Are you some sort of terrorist? Asked Tic Tac. Terrorist is a rather strong accusation, and one that I think doesn't do us justice. I prefer the title collector. Others like to throw titles on everything so they can understand it better, she declared, fastening the clamps on her bags and preparing to leave. I'll take you to Alurus Extant, but I'd like to request a stop along the way. You would allow us that, right? My current mission is vastly more important than your next criminal undertaking, that I can assure you. I do not know how much time there is left, and I must get my warning to the UF. I've promised someone I would meet them somewhere, and I am a captain of my word. Assist me in fulfilling this one obligation, and us and our ship will be yours extant. That's a promise. Very well. One stop.